I never thought I'd be sitting on the cold wooden floor of my bedroom, ear pressed against a vent, listening to my future crumble apart. But there I was, frozen in place as my dad's voice drifted clearly through the metal slats. Linda, I had to do it. Clara needs this opportunity more than Emma does. My heart stopped. Dad was talking to my stepmom about me. I'd only meant to grab my sweater from my room during their private talk, but my name had caught my attention. David, I understand wanting to help Clara, but that was Emma's college fund. Linda's voice sounded worried. $70,000 is Emma's entire future. We promised her. I know what we promised. Dad cut in, his voice tight. But Emma will be fine. She's smart. She'll get scholarships. I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from making a sound. My college fund? The money Mom had set aside for me before she died? The money Dad had sworn was safe for my dream school? Clara's art program in Europe is a once-in-a-lifetime chance, Dad continued. Emma wouldn't want her stepsister to miss that. Except he'd never asked me. And he was wrong. So wrong. My eyes burned with tears as I slid down against the wall. For 4 years of high school, I'd worked myself to exhaustion, keeping a perfect 4 GPA. I'd given up weekends, parties, even sleep all for Stanford, my dream school, that was way too expensive, without that fund. What will you tell Emma? Linda asked. There was a long pause before Dad answered. I'll figure something out. Community college is always an option for her first 2 years. Community college. After all my hard work. After all my sacrifices. Clara doesn't even know if she wants to be an artist, Linda said softly. Emma has been planning for Stanford since she was 12. I've made my decision, Dad said firmly. Clara needs this more than Emma does. Those words hit me like a physical blow. Clara needed it more? My stepsister, who'd breezed through high school with average grades and a new hobby every 3 months. I covered my mouth tighter as a sob threatened to escape. Through the vent, I could hear them still talking, their voices growing fainter as they moved away. With shaking legs, I crawled to my bed and buried my face in my pillow. Hot tears soaked the fabric as I tried to process what I'd just learned. $70,000. Gone. My future. Gone. And Dad hadn't even told me himself. For hours, I just lay there, crying. When night fell, I heard a soft knock on my door. Emma? Dinner's ready, Dad called. I quickly wiped my eyes. I'm not hungry, I called back, proud that my voice barely shook. Are you feeling okay? He sounded concerned, and for a second, I almost laughed at the irony. Just tired. Big test tomorrow, I lied. All right, honey. I'll save you a plate. I listened to his footsteps fade away. Normally, I would have confronted him immediately, yelling and demanding answers, but something stopped me. Maybe it was hearing him dismiss my future so easily, or maybe it was realizing that emotional pleas wouldn't change his mind. Instead, I sat up and took a deep breath. Crying wouldn't get my money back. Begging wouldn't reverse his decision. If Dad thought Clara deserved my future more than I did, then fine. I'd find another way. I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, Plan B. My mum always said that when life knocks you down, you have 2 choices. Stay down or get up with a plan. And I definitely wasn't staying down. The next morning, I got up early and splashed cold water on my face. My eyes were still puffy from crying, but I didn't care. With careful movements, I applied concealer just like Mom had taught me before she got sick. Works every time, I whispered to my reflection, remembering her words. I heard voices downstairs, Dad and Linda in the kitchen, and Clara's music blasting from her room across the hall. Taking a deep breath, I headed down, my face a perfect mask of normal. Morning, I said, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. Dad looked up from his coffee with a smile. Hey kiddo, feeling better today? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak more than necessary. We missed you at dinner, Linda said, sliding a plate of toast toward me. Clara was telling us about her art portfolio. Her teacher thinks she has real talent. I bit into the apple, using the crunch to cover my silence. Of course, Clara was talking about art last night. The art program my money was paying for. I have to go early, I said after swallowing. Study group before class. Dad frowned. You're pushing yourself too hard, Em. You're already a straight-A student. The concern in his voice made my stomach twist. How could he worry about me studying too hard while stealing my college fund? Grades matter for scholarships, I said, the word scholarships coming out sharper than I intended. A flicker of something guilt maybe crossed Dad's face. Emma, actually, I wanted to talk to you about college. Later, okay? I'm late. I grabbed my backpack and headed for the door. Emma, Dad started. Bye, I called, escaping before he could see the tears welling up again. Outside, the cool morning air helped clear my head. Dad was going to tell me, I realized. He was going to explain why my stepsister deserved my college fund more than I did. As I walked to school, my sadness hardened into something else. Determination. During first period, instead of focusing on Mrs. Peterson's lecture about photosynthesis, I made a list in the back of my notebook. At the top, I wrote, Mom's things to check. After Mom died 3 years ago, I'd packed most of her belongings away. It had been too painful to look at them. But now, I needed to find anything that might help me understand my college fund. Had she left documents? Instructions? Anything that might prevent Dad from giving my money away? By lunchtime, my plan was set. I'd skip last period, something I'd never done before, and go home while everyone was out. Dad would be at work, Linda at her book club, and Clara at her art class. The empty house felt strange in the middle of the day. Sunlight streamed through windows that would normally be dark when I got home from after-school activities. I went straight to the attic, to the corner where we'd stored Mom's boxes. The first 2 containers held clothes and books nothing helpful. The third was filled with photo albums that made my throat tight. But in the 4th box, beneath Mom's old sweaters, I found a leather-bound journal. I'd never seen it before. The cover was worn, and when I opened it, I recognized Mom's handwriting immediately. My hands trembled as I carried it to my room. Sitting cross-legged on my bed, I began to read. Most entries were normal diary stuff thoughts about her day, funny things I'd done as a little kid, her hopes for the future. But halfway through, I found an entry that made my heart race. Set up Emma's college trust fund today. David doesn't understand why I'm so insistent on keeping it separate from our regular accounts, but I want to make sure she's taken care of, no matter what. The lawyer says this way, it can only be used for Emma's education. I sleep better, knowing that's protected. I read the paragraph 3 times. A trust fund? Separate from their regular accounts? Something that could only be used for Emma's education? If Mom had set it up with a lawyer, how could Dad just take it and give it to Clara? I flipped through more pages, finding another entry months later. Ryan came by today with flowers. He's done so well for himself since college. When he heard about my diagnosis, he insisted on helping somehow. I told him Emma is my only concern. He promised he'd look out for her if anything happened to me. I believe him. Ryan. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Turning to the back of the journal, I found a small address book tucked into the pocket. Flipping through, I stopped at R. Ryan Matthews, with an email address and phone number. My mind raced with questions. Who was this Ryan person? A friend of Mom's? And more importantly, could he help me figure out what happened to my college trust fund? I took out my phone and looked him up. The search results surprised me. Ryan Matthews, 35, CEO of Matrix Code, a successful tech company that had been featured in business magazines. There were photos of a tall man with kind eyes and a serious expression at various tech events. I looked closer at one picture and gasped. In the background of a group shot, barely visible, was my mom. They had known each other. Without giving myself time to chicken out, I opened my laptop and pulled up my coding projects. For the past 2 years, I'd been teaching myself programming as a hobby. Most people at school didn't know about it. It wasn't exactly the coolest pastime, but I'd built several apps and games that I was proud of. I found Ryan Matthews' professional email from his company website and began typing, Dear Mr. Matthews, you may not remember me, but I'm Emma Miller, Sarah Miller's daughter. I recently found my mother's journal, where she mentioned you promised to help me if I ever needed it. I'm reaching out because I could use that help now. I've attached my coding portfolio, so you can see I'm not just asking for handouts. I want to earn my way, but my college fund situation has become complicated. Would it be possible to meet for a few minutes? I understand if you're too busy. Thank you for considering. Emma Miller. I attached links to my best coding projects, took a deep breath, and hit send before I could change my mind. Then I carefully returned Mom's journal to my hiding spot, not the attic, where Dad might notice it was missing, but under the loose floorboard beneath my bed that Mom had shown me years ago. Every girl needs a secret place, she'd said with a wink. I checked the time. Everyone would be home soon. I needed to act normal while I waited to see if Ryan would respond. I was just starting on homework when I heard the front door open. Emma, Dad called. You're home early. Last period was cancelled. I lied, coming to the top of the stairs. Teacher was sick. Dad looked tired. Older, somehow. Was it guilt weighing on him? Or just my new way of seeing him? Listen, Emma. I wanted to talk to you about something important, he said, setting down his briefcase. My heart pounded. Was he going to confess about the college fund? Before he could continue, Clara burst through the front door, waving a letter. It came! It came! She squealed, completely ignoring me. Dad, look! The acceptance letter from the European Arts Academy. I got in. Dad's face transformed with pride. That's wonderful, honey. Clara jumped up and down. I can't believe it. This program is so exclusive. Only 20 students worldwide. I knew you could do it, Dad said, hugging her. I stood frozen on the stairs, watching them celebrate. The program that my 70 had bought. The opportunity that was apparently more important than my future. Emma, Dad said, finally noticing me again. Isn't this great news for your sister? Stepsister. I wanted to correct him, but instead, I forced a smile. Congratulations, Clara, I said, my voice hollow. Clara barely glanced at me. Thanks, she said dismissively before turning back to Dad. We need to celebrate. Can we go out for dinner? Somewhere fancy? Of course, Dad agreed immediately. Emma, get changed. We'll leave in an hour. I can't, I said quietly. I have too much homework. Dad frowned. This is a family celebration, Emma. Family. The word felt bitter in my mind. What kind of family took from one child to give to another? I really can't, I insisted. But go ahead without me. Before he could argue, my phone dinged with an email notification. When I checked it, my breath caught. From Ryan Matthews. Subject. Sarah Miller's daughter. Emma, I remember you well. Your mother spoke of you constantly. I would be honored to meet. How about tomorrow, at 4 p.m., at the Coffee Bean on Main Street? And I'm very impressed by your coding projects. You have your mother's intelligence and determination. Ryan. I looked up from my phone to find Dad still watching me. Concern and something else, a suspicion, maybe in his eyes. Everything okay? He asked. I nodded, tucking my phone away. Just a school notification. As Dad and Clara continued their excited chatter about Europe and art and opportunities, I slipped back to my room. For the first time since overhearing that devastating conversation, I felt a flicker of hope. Tomorrow, at 4 o'clock, I'd meet Ryan Matthews, and maybe, just maybe, I'd find a way to take control of my future again. The next day dragged by endlessly. I couldn't focus in any of my classes. Too nervous about meeting Ryan. What if he couldn't help me? What if he thought I was just a whiny kid? What if meeting him made Dad even angrier? By the time the final bell rang, my stomach was in knots. I changed in the school bathroom, swapping my jeans for a nicer pair of pants, and adding a blazer over my t-shirt. I wanted to look mature, not like some desperate teenager. The Coffee Bean was busy with after-work customers when I arrived. I scanned the tables, unsure how I'd recognize Ryan in person. Emma? I turned to find the man from the internet photos standing behind me. He was taller than I expected, dressed in a casual button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled back. No fancy suit like in the magazines. Mr. Matthews? I said, extending my hand the way Mom had taught me. Thank you for meeting me. He smiled, shaking my hand firmly. Please, call me Ryan. I'd have known you anywhere you look, just like Sarah. My throat tightened at the mention of Mom. People say that. I managed. Let's grab a table, he suggested, nodding toward a quiet corner. What can I get you to drink? Just water is fine, I said automatically. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Your mother was addicted to their caramel lattes. Sure you don't want to try one? The casual way he mentioned Mom's favorite drink something I'd almost forgotten made me blink back tears. Okay, I said softly. A small one. While Ryan ordered, I took my seat and organized my thoughts. I'd prepared what to say on the walkover, but suddenly, all my practice words seemed inadequate. Ryan returned with our drinks and sat across from me. So, he said, your email mentioned college fund complications. Want to tell me what's going on? I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, finding comfort in its heat. Then I told him everything, overhearing Dad, giving my college fund to Clara, finding Mom's journal, discovering the mention of a special trust fund that should have been protected. Ryan listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, he leaned forward. Emma, first of all, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Your mother would be furious. I nodded, throat tight. The trust fund she mentioned was real, Ryan continued. I was there when she set it up with her lawyer. It was specifically written to only be accessible for your education expenses. Then how could Dad just take it? I asked, my voice cracking. Ryan's jaw tightened. He shouldn't have been able to. Not legally, at least. There would have been paperwork, trustees to sign off. Could he have forged something? The thought made me sick. Let's not jump to conclusions, Ryan said, though his expression was troubled. There might be an explanation. What matters now is figuring out your next steps. I nodded, blinking back tears. I don't know what to do. Stanford was always the plan. I've worked so hard. Ryan took a sip of his coffee, studying me thoughtfully. Your coding portfolio is impressive, Emma. Really impressive. How long have you been programming? About 2 years, I said, surprised by the change in topic. I taught myself from online classes. And the algorithm you created for sorting database entries, did you develop that yourself? I nodded. It was for fun. I was trying to organize my music library faster. Ryan smiled. Emma, that fun project is more advanced than what some of my entry-level programmers can do. I blushed, unused to having my coding hobby taken seriously. Here's my offer, Ryan said, setting down his cup. My company needs innovative thinkers. We have a paid internship program that normally requires a year of college, but I'm willing to make an exception in your case. My heart began to race. An internship? At Matrix Code? He nodded. It pays well enough to start building your own college fund if you're careful with it. And if you excel, there could be scholarship opportunities through our educational partners. But I'm still in high school, I said, stunned. I have classes. We can work around your schedule. Afternoons, evenings, weekends. Most of it can be done remotely. Ryan leaned forward. It won't be easy, Emma. You'll be juggling school and what amounts to a part-time job. But from what your mother always said about you, and from what I can see in your work, you're more than capable. I stared at him, hardly believing what I was hearing. A paid internship? A chance to earn my own college money? Why would you do this for me? I asked finally. You barely know me. Ryan's expression softened. I promised your mother I'd look out for you if you ever needed help. But that's not why I'm offering you this job. I'm offering because you're talented, and my company would benefit from having you on our team. I took a deep breath, considering his words. This wasn't charity, it was an opportunity I'd earned through my own skills. And maybe, just maybe, it was the solution I needed. When can I start? I asked. Ryan smiled. How about Monday? 3 months later, I stood in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear to the dinner party I'd been dreading. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Ready for tonight? Remember, confidence is key. I smiled, typing back. As ready as I'll ever be. Thanks again for agreeing to come. The invitation, a fancy cream-colored card that had been shoved under my door as an obvious afterthought, lay on my bed. celebrating Clara's acceptance to the European Arts Academy. It announced in sweeping calligraphy. Dad had scribbled at the bottom, "Hope you can make time from your job to attend." The casual mention of my job still stung. In the 3 months since I'd started at Matrix Code, Dad had gone from confused to concerned to vaguely disapproving of my new schedule. I woke up at 5 every morning to finish homework before school, went straight to the company's local office after last period, and often didn't return home until late, avoiding awkward family dinners. What Dad didn't know, what none of them knew, was how well the internship was going. Ryan had placed me on a project team working on efficiency algorithms, and last month, my solution had saved the company a significant amount of money. So significant that Ryan had granted me a small equity share and featured me in the company's internal magazine. Tonight, they'd all find out, not because I was going to brag, but because Ryan, now officially my mentor, and unofficially the closest thing I had to family support, had suggested a subtle form of justice. "Don't get even, get ahead," he'd advised when I told him about the dinner party. "And let me come as your +1. It'll be educational." I finally settled on an outfitter, professional-looking navy dress that Linda had never seen before, bought with my own money. As I applied light makeup, I heard Clara's excited voice from downstairs as the first guests arrived. "I still can't believe I was chosen from thousands of applicants," she was saying loudly. "The program director said my portfolio showed exceptional promise." I took a deep breath, tamping down the anger that still flared whenever I thought about how her exceptional promise was being funded. This wasn't about revenge, I reminded myself. This was about standing on my own feet. My phone buzzed again. Ryan was outside, right on time. I grabbed my small clutch purse and headed downstairs, pausing briefly at the bottom of the steps to observe the scene. The living room was filled with my father's colleagues and Linda's friends, all gathered around Clara, who was showing off a portfolio of her artwork. Dad stood nearby, beaming with pride. No one noticed me until I opened the door for Ryan. "Emma, you're finally joining us," Dad called, his smile a little too bright. "We were beginning to think you weren't coming." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, stepping aside to let Ryan enter. The conversation in the room faltered as people took in my unexpected guest. Ryan Matthews wasn't a household name, but in business circles, he was recognizable enough to cause whispers. "Everyone," I said with a confidence I'd developed over the past months, "this is Ryan Matthews, my CEO and mentor." Dad's fork, which he'd been using to gesture while telling a story, clattered onto his plate. "Your CEO?" he repeated. Ryan smiled, extending his hand to Dad. "Mr. Miller, wonderful to finally meet you. Emma is an exceptional asset to our team at Matrix Code. In fact, we just finalized her compensation package yesterday, including a full scholarship to MIT. They were quite impressed with her development work." The silence in the room was deafening. Clara's smug expression froze, transforming slowly into shock. Linda's smile became fixed and brittle. "Mitt?" Dad finally managed. "But your dream was always Stanford." I nodded. "Plans change. MIT has an incredible computer science program, and with the scholarship and my company benefits, it's fully covered." A middle-aged woman I recognized as Linda's friend leaned forward. "Matrix Code? Isn't that the tech company that was just featured in Fortune?" "That's us," Ryan confirmed pleasantly. "Emma here actually solved a major efficiency problem that saved us millions. She's our youngest team leader now." Linda cleared her throat. "Well, that's very impressive, Emma. But tonight we're celebrating Clara's acceptance to the European Arts Program. It's very prestigious, you know." "Oh, is that the 70-0 program?" Ryan asked innocently. "Emma's year-end bonus will be twice that amount, actually." Dad choked on his drink. For the rest of dinner, I watched as my family tried to process what they were hearing. Clara kept trying to steer conversation back to her art program, but guests were far more interested in Ryan's stories about the tech industry and my role in it. Emma developed a completely new approach to our database management. Ryan explained to an attentive audience. "In fact, we're discussing a new project that's attracted significant venture capital interest. Emma will be leading the development team." "Really?" one of Dad's colleagues asked. clearly impressed. That's remarkable for someone still in high school. I nodded, trying to appear modest. I've been very fortunate to have the right opportunity. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Dad watching me. His expression, a complicated mix of surprise, confusion, and something that might have been pride or guilt. During dessert, while Clara was showing her portfolio to some guests in the living room, Dad pulled me aside into the kitchen. "Emma," he said quietly, "why didn't you tell me about any of this? The job? MIT? All of it?" I met his eyes steadily. "Would it have mattered?" He flinched. "Of course it would matter. I'm your father. Your success is important to me." "Is it?" I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. "Because 3 months ago, you decided Clara's opportunity was more important than my college fund." Dad's face paled. You know about that?" "I overheard you and Linda talking that night," I admitted. "I heard you say Clara needed it more than I did." Dad ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly older. "Emma, I can explain." "You don't need to," I interrupted. "It worked out. I found my own way." "With Ryan Matthews?" Dad asked, a hint of suspicion in his voice. "How do you even know him?" "Mom did," I said simply. "She mentioned him in her journal." Confusion crossed Dad's face. "Sarah's journal? I didn't know she kept one." "There's a lot you don't know," I said quietly. Dad's eyes filled with tears, surprising me. "I'm sorry, Emma. I thought. I convinced myself that you'd be fine, that you'd get scholarships. Clara's opportunity seemed so immediate, and your college was still a year away, and I just..." He trailed off, wiping his eyes. "I broke my promise to you, to your mother. I was going to find a way to make it up to you." The sincerity in his voice made my own eyes sting, but I held firm. "You promised after Mom died that you'd always put me first." I reminded him. "That changed when Linda and Clara came along." "I know," he whispered. "I lost sight of what matters. Can we try to rebuild? Can you forgive me?" I looked at my father, really looked at him, and saw the man who had held me when Mom died, who had taught me to ride a bike, who had been my hero for so many years. But I also saw the man who had betrayed my trust and given away my future without a second thought. "I'll always be your daughter," I said finally. "But I've learned to rely on myself now, and trust, once it's broken, takes more than words to repair." Dad nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I understand," he said. "I'm proud of you, Em. Your mother would be too." Before I could respond, Linda appeared in the doorway. "There you are. Clara's about to play the piano for everyone." "We'll be right there," Dad said, not taking his eyes off me. Linda glanced between us, then added with forced cheerfulness, "Emma, we've been thinking. If you need help with your education expenses after all, we could." "That's very kind," Ryan interrupted smoothly, appearing behind Linda. "But as I explained earlier, Emma's scholarship and company benefits make outside assistance unnecessary. In fact, she'll be financially independent well before graduation." The look on Linda's face was almost worth everything I'd been through. Later that night, as Ryan drove me back to the hotel where he was staying, I'd arranged to spend the night there rather than go home after the dinner. We finally let ourselves laugh about the evening. "Did you see Clara's face when you mentioned your bonus?" I asked, grinning for the first time in hours. Ryan chuckled. "I might have enjoyed that more than I should have, but your father seemed genuinely sorry, Emma." My smile faded. "Yeah, he did." "You know," Ryan said after a moment, "I never told you why I was so willing to help when you reached out." I turned to look at him. "Because you promised Mom?" "Partly," he admitted, "but also because I know what it feels like to be betrayed by family. My father emptied my college account to bail my brother out of trouble when I was 17. I had to figure it all out on my own." I stared at him in surprise. "Really? You never told me that." "It's not something I talk about often," he said, keeping his eyes on the road. "But I want you to know, your success at Matrix Code isn't charity or favoritism. You earned every bit of it with your talent and hard work. I just opened a door. You walked through it on your own." We fell silent as the car continued through the night. As we passed my neighborhood, I looked back at my childhood home, growing smaller in the distance. 3 months ago, I'd thought losing my college fund was the end of my dreams. Instead, it had pushed me to find something more valuable: confidence in my own abilities, and a future I was building on my terms. "Thank you," I said softly to Ryan. "Not just for the job, but for being there tonight." Ryan nodded. "What are you thinking about now?" I watched the streetlights casting shadows across my lap. "I'm thinking Mom would be proud," I said finally. "Not because I got into it now, or because I have a good job, but because when life knocked me down, I got back up." "With a plan," Ryan added with a smile. "With a plan," I agreed, turning away from the past and facing forward.